What if I told you fasting is not where the real healing happens? For years, you've been told that the longer you fast, the more powerful the results. That if you can just push through the hunger, the fatigue, the brain fog, your body will magically repair itself, burn fat faster, and regenerate from the inside out. But what if that's only half the truth? Because right now, thousands of people are doing everything right. They're fasting for 24, 48, even 72 hours. They're disciplined, they're committed, and yet they still feel stuck. Low energy, slow results. Plateaus that don't make sense. Here's what almost no one tells you. The most critical moment for healing doesn't happen during the fast. It happens after. There's a hidden biological switch inside your body, one that doesn't fully turn on when you're fasting. In fact, your stem cells, your mitochondria, the very systems responsible for rebuilding you, stay in a kind of standby mode, and the moment you eat again, that's when everything changes. But here's the problem. Most people completely miss it. They unknowingly shut this process down before it even begins. One wrong move, one careless meal, and the body shifts from regeneration back into dysfunction. There's a narrow window, a powerful, almost invisible phase where your body decides whether to rebuild stronger or fall back into the same patterns. And if you miss it, you could be wasting all the benefits of fasting without even realizing it. My name is Dr. Leon Hartwell. I've spent the last decade working in the fields of metabolic health, cellular biology, and longevity research, studying how the body repairs itself at the deepest level. My work has focused heavily on fasting, stem cell activation, and mitochondrial function, the very systems that determine how fast you age, how much energy you have, and how efficiently your body burns fat. But my real education didn't just come from research papers or lab data. It came from working directly with patients, people struggling with insulin resistance, chronic fatigue, stubborn weight that wouldn't budge no matter how hard they tried. And over the years, I started noticing a pattern that didn't make sense at first. I've seen countless patients do everything right, fasting for 48, even 72 hours. They were disciplined. They followed the protocols. They pushed through the discomfort, expecting a breakthrough on the other side. But instead, they felt drained, sluggish, sometimes even worse than before. Their results slowed down. Their energy didn't come back the way they expected. And in many cases, they hit frustrating plateaus. That's when I realized something critical was missing. Because biologically, fasting does trigger powerful processes, like cellular cleanup and stress adaptation. But what most people don't understand is this. Fasting prepares the body for repair. It doesn't complete it. The real transformation, the regeneration, the rebuilding, the surge in mitochondrial activity doesn't fully happen until after the fast is broken. And yet, this is the exact phase almost everyone ignores. Through years of clinical observation and working closely with patients, I began to see dramatic differences between those who simply fasted and those who understood how to refeed correctly. The breakthrough didn't come from extending the fast longer and longer. It came from what they did immediately after. That's where the real shift happened, where the body either rebuilt stronger, more energized, more efficient, or slipped right back into dysfunction. And once you understand how this works, everything changes. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to use that moment to your advantage. To really understand how to unlock the full power of fasting, you have to see the bigger picture. Because what's happening inside your body is far more complex than just burning fat or detoxing. In this video, we're going to walk through that process step by step, almost like pulling back the curtain on what your body is actually doing behind the scenes. First, you'll discover what truly happens during fasting compared to what happens after you eat again, because these are not the same phase. They serve completely different biological purposes. One is about breaking down and clearing out damaged cells, while the other is about rebuilding, regenerating, and upgrading your system. Then we'll dive into the moment where everything shifts, the biological switch that flips your body from a state of breakdown into a state of regeneration. This is the phase most people never even realize exists. Yet it determines whether your results accelerate or stall. You'll also learn why your stem cells, the very cells responsible for repair and renewal, don't fully activate during fasting itself. They wait. They stay dormant until the body receives a very specific signal. And when that signal finally arrives, the response can be incredibly powerful. From there, we'll explore what happens to your mitochondria, your body's energy engines, and how they rapidly rebuild when given the right inputs. This is where energy levels, fat burning, and even mental clarity can dramatically shift in a short period of time. We'll break down the hidden phase no one talks about, the science behind the transition from autophagy into regeneration, and what current research is revealing about stem cell activation in this window. Most importantly, I'll show you the exact refeeding approach, when to eat, what to eat, and how to do it in a way that amplifies everything your fast has set in motion, because one wrong move here can cancel out a huge portion of your results. We'll also go through the most common mistakes people make without realizing it, and why they keep ending up tired, plateaued, or disappointed. And finally, you'll understand what changes to expect in your body within just a few days when you get this right, so you can actually feel the difference, not just hope for it. Most people approach fasting with one simple belief: if some fasting is good, then more must be better. So they push it further: longer fasts, more restriction, more discipline. And to be fair, fasting does trigger something powerful inside the body. When you stop eating, your body shifts into a state of internal cleanup. A process known as autophagy begins to ramp up, where damaged cells, dysfunctional proteins, and cellular waste are broken down and recycled. It's like your body is taking out the trash, clearing space, removing what no longer works. But here's the part almost no one talks about. During this phase, your body is not building anything new. It's breaking down, not rebuilding. And this is where the problem starts. Because many people assume that if they just extend the fast, go from 24 hours to 48, then 72, they'll accelerate results. More fat loss, more healing, more regeneration. But biologically, that's not how it works. There comes a point where extending the fast doesn't amplify the benefits. It delays the next critical phase your body is waiting for. Regeneration requires a completely different signal, and without that signal, the body stays in a prolonged state of breakdown. Now layer this with what's happening as we age. Stem cells, the cells responsible for repair and renewal, become less responsive over time. They don't activate as easily. Your mitochondria, which produce energy for every cell in your body, also start to decline in efficiency. They become slower, less adaptable, and more prone to dysfunction. Add in years of poor diet, unstable blood sugar, and reduced insulin sensitivity, and you have a system that's already struggling to rebuild effectively. So when someone fasts without understanding what comes next, they're essentially pushing their body deeper into a state it can't sustain long term. This is the misunderstanding. Fasting is only half the equation, but most people never complete the second half. Conventional advice doesn't help either. It focuses almost entirely on calorie restriction. Eat less, fast longer, burn more, but it ignores something far more important: the signals your body needs to switch from breakdown into repair. Because your body doesn't just respond to how much you eat, it responds to when you eat and what you eat at a cellular level. Think of it like demolishing an old house. Fasting tears down the damaged structure, it clears the debris, removes the weak foundations, and creates space for something better. But if you never bring in the builders, nothing new ever gets constructed. And that's exactly where most people get stuck, waiting for results that require a phase they never activate. The real magic begins when the body receives the signal to rebuild. To really understand why this phase matters so much, you have to look at what your body is actually doing on a cellular level. And once you see it, everything starts to make sense. During fasting, your body activates autophagy. Think of this as your internal cleanup crew. It goes through damaged cells, broken proteins, and cellular waste, breaking them down and recycling what it can. This process is incredibly important. But it's only the first step, because after the cleanup comes something even more powerful: the switch into regeneration. And that switch doesn't happen in the absence of food. It happens when nutrients return. This is where your body shifts from tearing down to building back up. One of the key drivers of this shift is a pathway known as mTOR. Now, mTOR often gets a bad reputation because it's associated with growth, and uncontrolled growth can be harmful. But in the right context, especially after fasting, controlled activation of mTOR is exactly what your body needs. It's the signal that tells your cells, we have resources again. It's time to repair, rebuild, and grow stronger. But timing is everything. If this signal comes too early or in the wrong way, the benefits are minimal. If it comes at the right moment, after a period of deprivation, the response is amplified. This is also when stem cells begin to activate more aggressively. Your hematopoietic stem cells, which are responsible for producing new immune cells, remain relatively quiet during the fast. They're waiting, conserving energy. But when nutrients are reintroduced after that period of stress, they receive a powerful signal to regenerate and replenish. This is how your immune system begins to rebuild, stronger and more efficient than before. At the same time, your mitochondria, the tiny energy factories inside your cells, start going through a process called mitochondrial biogenesis. In simple terms, your body begins creating new, more efficient mitochondria. This is where people start to notice a real shift in energy. Not just temporary stimulation, but a deeper, more sustained level of vitality. And here's where it gets even more interesting. After fasting, your insulin sensitivity is significantly elevated. Your body becomes incredibly efficient at absorbing and utilizing nutrients. Glucose is handled better. Amino acids are directed more precisely. Everything you consume is processed with heightened precision. It's almost like your body becomes a sponge after fasting. Whatever you give it, it uses with maximum efficiency, which means one thing: the refeed is not just eating. It's a biological command that tells your body exactly what to rebuild, how to rebuild it, and how strong that new system will be. Over the past few years, researchers have started to look at fasting in a very different way. Not just as a tool for weight loss, but as a biological stressor that can reset parts of the body at a cellular level. And what they found is fascinating. In several university-based studies, including research from major longevity and metabolic health institutions, scientists observed that extended fasting cycles followed by controlled refeeding triggered some of the most significant regenerative responses in the body. But here's what surprised them most. It wasn't the fasting period itself that produced the strongest regeneration signals. It was what happened after feeding resumed. In animal studies, particularly those focused on hematopoietic stem cells, researchers discovered that prolonged fasting temporarily reduces activity in the immune system. White blood cell counts drop during the fasting phase as the body conserves resources. But once nutrients are reintroduced, especially after a period of extended deprivation, something remarkable happens. The body doesn't just return to baseline, it rebounds. White blood cell regeneration increases significantly, suggesting that stem cells are being activated to rebuild the immune system more aggressively than before. This finding was particularly strong in studies from leading academic research groups studying fasting-mimicking diets and regenerative biology. They observed that cycles of nutrient deprivation, followed by refeeding, created a stronger regenerative response than constant eating or fasting alone. Metabolic markers also improved in these cycles. Researchers noted better glucose control, improved lipid profiles, and enhanced insulin sensitivity following refeeding phases after fasting periods. This is important because insulin sensitivity is a key indicator of how efficiently the body processes energy and nutrients. The more sensitive the system, the more effectively cells can absorb and use fuel. At the same time, other studies focusing on mitochondrial function showed increased signs of mitochondrial biogenesis following refeeding. In simple terms, cells began producing more efficient energy-producing structures after nutrients were reintroduced. What's interesting is how consistent these findings were across different models. Both animal and early human trials pointed toward the same conclusion. The real regenerative response wasn't happening in isolation during fasting. It was happening in the transition phase, when the body shifted from scarcity back to nourishment. This changed how researchers look at fasting entirely. Instead of viewing it as a standalone intervention, many now see it as part of a cycle, a two-phase process involving both breakdown and rebuilding. Scientists found that the regeneration didn't happen during fasting. It happened when feeding resumed, and that insight reshaped the entire conversation around metabolic health, immune repair, and cellular rejuvenation. To actually take advantage of this regeneration window, you need a very specific approach, because what you do after fasting is just as important, if not more important, than the fast itself. Step 1 is breaking the fast gently. Your digestive system has been in a low activity state, and suddenly overwhelming it with heavy or processed food can shock the system. This is why a gradual reintroduction works best. Options like bone broth or a light source of protein help ease the body back into digestion, while still signaling that nutrients are available. Step 2 is structuring your first real meal correctly. This is where most people make mistakes. Your first full meal should prioritize high-quality protein, such as eggs, fish, or lean meats. Protein provides the essential building blocks for repair and regeneration. Alongside this, healthy fats like avocado or olive oil support hormone balance and cellular recovery. What you want to avoid here is just as important: sugar and refined carbohydrates. These can spike insulin too quickly and disrupt the clean metabolic state your body has just achieved. Step 3 is timing. After fasting, your body is extremely sensitive to nutrients. This is powerful, but only if controlled. You don't want to rush into constant eating or large portions immediately. Instead, maintain a structured eating window and allow your body time to respond and adapt between meals. Step 4 focuses on nutrient density. This is the phase where your body is primed to absorb and utilize nutrients efficiently. So the quality of what you eat matters more than ever. Foods rich in vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants help support mitochondrial recovery, reduce oxidative stress, and enhance overall cellular repair. Step 5 is hydration and electrolytes. During fasting, your body loses key minerals like sodium, potassium, and magnesium. If these aren't replenished properly, you can experience fatigue, headaches, and reduced cellular efficiency. Proper hydration ensures that all regenerative processes function smoothly. Now, there are some common mistakes that completely undo these benefits. Breaking your fast with sugar is one of the biggest errors. It immediately disrupts insulin balance and can push your body back into fat storage mode. Overeating too quickly is another issue, overwhelming digestion and reducing nutrient efficiency. And ignoring protein altogether leaves your body without the necessary material to rebuild. Because here's the truth. The first meal you eat after fasting determines whether your body rebuilds stronger or stores fat and returns to its old patterns. Results from this kind of metabolic reset process don't happen all at once. They unfold in clear biological phases as your body adapts, repairs, and recalibrates its internal systems. In the first few days, typically days 1 to 3, most people begin noticing subtle but important shifts. Digestion becomes noticeably smoother as the gut is no longer constantly overloaded. The bloating that often comes from irregular eating patterns or inflammatory foods starts to reduce. Energy, which may feel unstable during or immediately after fasting, begins to stabilize instead of crashing throughout the day. You might still feel some fluctuations, but the overall pattern becomes more balanced as the body adjusts to nutrient reintroduction. Moving into week 1 to week 2, deeper metabolic changes start to emerge. This is when insulin response begins to improve in a more measurable way. The body starts handling glucose more efficiently, reducing spikes and crashes that contribute to fatigue and cravings. Mentally, many people report a noticeable increase in clarity and focus, as the brain becomes more stable in its energy supply. Some early fat loss may also become visible, especially around areas where the body tends to store excess energy first. By week 3 to week 8, the effects become more structural and systemic. This is where metabolic improvements become more consistent rather than temporary. Energy production feels more sustained throughout the day, and physical endurance begins to improve. Workouts may feel easier, recovery faster, and general inflammation in the body starts to decrease. This phase reflects deeper cellular adaptation, where mitochondria are functioning more efficiently and the body is shifting toward a more resilient metabolic state. From month 2 to month 3, the changes often feel more long-lasting and foundational. The immune system becomes more balanced and responsive, supported by improved cellular turnover and regeneration patterns. Recovery from stress, poor sleep, or physical exertion becomes faster. Fat loss, if aligned with proper nutrition, becomes more sustainable rather than fluctuating. At this stage, the body is no longer just reacting to fasting cycles. It is adapting to a more efficient baseline state of energy use and repair. It's important to understand that these timelines are not identical for everyone. Genetics, age, diet quality, sleep, stress levels, and consistency all influence how quickly these changes appear. Some people experience faster shifts, while others take longer to stabilize, but the underlying pattern remains consistent. Improvement builds gradually, then compounds over time. The key takeaway is that transformation doesn't come from a single fast or a single meal. It comes from repeated cycles done correctly, allowing the body to progressively shift into a more efficient regenerative state. Before considering any fasting or structured refeeding approach, it's important to understand that these methods place real metabolic demands on the body, and they are not suitable for everyone in the same way. Certain individuals need to be especially cautious. People with diabetes who are taking medication, particularly insulin or glucose-lowering drugs, should never attempt extended fasting or major dietary changes without medical supervision. Fasting can significantly affect blood sugar levels, and without proper adjustment of medication, it may lead to dangerous fluctuations such as hypoglycemia. Pregnant and breastfeeding women also fall into a category where fasting protocols must be approached with care. During these periods, the body has increased nutritional and energy demands, and prolonged fasting or restrictive eating patterns may not provide the consistent support needed for both maternal health and development. Individuals with a current or past history of eating disorders should also avoid structured fasting without professional guidance. For some, fasting can unintentionally reinforce restrictive behaviors or create an unhealthy relationship with food, which can be physically and emotionally harmful. Those with chronic illnesses, especially conditions involving the liver, kidneys, cardiovascular system, or endocrine function, should consult a healthcare professional before attempting any form of extended fasting or aggressive refeeding strategy. These systems are deeply involved in metabolic regulation, and changes in eating patterns can have wide-ranging effects. It is also important to recognize that fasting is not a one-size-fits-all approach. The ideal fasting duration, frequency, and refeeding strategy can vary significantly based on age, lifestyle, body composition, stress levels, and underlying health status. What may be beneficial for one person could be too stressful for another. This is why medical supervision or guidance from a qualified healthcare provider is strongly recommended, especially when experimenting with longer fasting windows or structured metabolic protocols. A professional can help ensure that any approach is adapted safely to individual needs rather than followed in a rigid or generalized way. The goal should always be metabolic health, energy stability, and long-term well-being, not extreme restriction or pushing the body beyond its safe limits. When used responsibly, fasting and refeeding strategies can be powerful tools, but they must be personalized, monitored, and adjusted carefully to match the individual's condition and response. Ultimately, listening to the body, respecting its signals, and prioritizing safety ensures that any metabolic practice remains supportive rather than stressful and beneficial rather than harmful. What you need to take away from all of this is simple but powerful. It's not just about fasting longer, it's about finishing the process correctly. Because for too long, people have believed that results come from extremes. Longer fasts, more restriction, pushing harder, forcing the body to do more with less. But your body doesn't respond to punishment, it responds to precision. And the real breakthrough happens when you understand that fasting is only one half of a much larger biological cycle. The breakdown phase is important, yes, but it is not the final step. The real transformation depends on how you complete the process afterward. That's where most people unknowingly lose their progress. But when you start to shift your mindset, even slightly, everything changes. Instead of chasing extreme protocols, you start focusing on small, consistent improvements. You start respecting timing. You start paying attention to what your body actually needs at each stage, instead of just forcing it into longer and harder fasts. And that's where real progress begins, because your body is not broken, it's not resistant, it's not failing you. In fact, it already knows exactly how to heal. Every system inside you, your metabolism, your immune system, your mitochondria, your stem cells, they all have built-in intelligence designed for repair and regeneration. The only missing piece is the right signal at the right time. When you give your body that signal, when you align fasting with proper refeeding, nutrient timing, and recovery, you stop fighting your biology and start working with it. And that's when the real shift happens, not just in how you look, but in how you feel, think, and function every single day. More energy, better clarity, faster recovery, a body that feels like it's finally working with you instead of against you. So don't get caught in the trap of doing more for the sake of more. Do it smarter, do it consistently, and let your biology do what it was designed to do. If this helped you understand the bigger picture, take a second to like the video. It really helps push this message to more people who need it. And make sure you subscribe. because there's a lot more coming on how to optimize fasting, metabolism, and cellular health in ways most people never learn. Finally, share this with someone who is currently fasting or struggling with results. They might just be missing the one piece that changes everything. Before you go, there's something even more important you need to understand, because everything we just covered is only part of a much bigger picture. What most people don't realize is that even when they follow fasting correctly, even when they get the timing right, even when they think they've unlocked autophagy and regeneration, there are still hidden factors that can completely change the outcome. And in the next video, I'm going to show you something very specific that most people overlook entirely. There is a certain nutrient signal, and in some cases, a simple daily compound exposure that can dramatically influence how strongly your stem cells respond after fasting. It can either amplify the regenerative effect or quietly weaken it without you even realizing. And the most surprising part? People often assume they're doing everything right because they're fasting consistently, but they're unknowingly interfering with the very biological switches they're trying to activate. There's also another side to this that almost no one talks about. A common everyday habit, something millions of people do without thinking, can actually interrupt autophagy at a cellular level. Even if your fasting window is perfect, even if your timing is precise, this one factor can reduce the effectiveness of the entire process. It doesn't always feel obvious. You won't immediately notice it, but inside the body, it changes how your cells interpret energy availability, stress signals, and repair mechanisms. And once that signal is disrupted, the entire regeneration cycle can become less efficient. This is why some people get incredible results from fasting, while others struggle with fatigue, plateaus, or minimal change, even when they follow the same protocols. Because the difference isn't always effort. Sometimes it's interference. In the next video, I'm going to break down exactly what that interference is, why it has such a strong effect on autophagy, and how to avoid it so your body can fully enter the deep regenerative state you've been working toward. And I'll also reveal how a single overlooked factor can determine whether fasting leads to full cellular renewal or just partial results that never quite live up to expectations. Once you understand this, you'll start to see fasting in a completely different way. Because the truth is, most people aren't failing because they lack discipline. They're failing because of something they never even realized was there. And most people are doing it every single day.